Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thanks for coming along to the session. My name is Phillips. I'm the project manager for the Mapping Scotland's Path project at Ramblers Scotland. And today I'm going to talk to you about the project and how we're managing to engage the public and our volunteers going forward. To start with some background on the Ramblers in case you're not familiar, we're a national walking charity, and our ethos has been that we open the way for everyone everywhere to enjoy the simple pleasures of walking. We've been around since 1935 and we have over 100,000 members across the country. And some of the things we do include organised group and wellbeing walks. We provide navigation and access training as well as health and safety advice. And we run projects like the Out There Award, which provides skills and confidence to 18 and 26-year-olds to help them get outdoors and be more active. And we provide formal training for volunteers and members and much more besides that as well. So what problem is the Mapping Scotland's Path project trying to solve? Scotland has world-leading access rates. You can walk on nearly all land in Scotland, providing you behave responsibly. And thanks to the Land Reform Act of 2003, it means we've got so much more opportunity for walking and getting outdoors in Scotland. Unlike England and Wales, there's no definitive map of rights of way, which means that there's huge sections and networks of paths that are lost or are just tied up in local knowledge. And it's a huge job to gather all that information and put it into one place and make it available. Scotland has its fair share of health problems, and we've commissioned some research that found that 75% of people in Scotland found that if there were more paths on the ground and on maps, it would help people get outdoors and be more active. So we're basically letting people know where they can actually go with the hope that it makes them use the paths that we have. It also leads to us educating the public on what they can do and their access rights, because a lot of people in Scotland don't actually know the rights they have when it comes to the outdoors. So a quick example of kind of what we're dealing with. On the left, you'll see a small kind of area of woodland that's from current paper maps, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a section from our Scottish Paths map, and you can see the big difference there. In just that small area, there's so many paths that aren't currently available on maps. So what was the solution to the problem? Essentially, the solution was to try and create Scotland's best ever path map, essentially. And to do this, we're focused on open and accessible data. So that's largely through our Scottish Paths map, which is the public-facing output of the project. Through strong partnerships, so we work with local authorities and other partners in the sector to share data and collaborate. And we focus on tech solutions with low barriers to access, because we want to put easy-to-use tools in the hands of people, so if people want to contribute, they can. And we're also focusing on the knowledge of our volunteers, because we need to actually know where the gaps are in the map to actually fill them. And this is where we are today. So, so far we've gathered a path network of more than 40,000 miles, and we've launched a map that's had over 100,000 views. And alongside that, we have audited 12,000 paths across Scotland, so we're capturing loads of information that can basically inform people as to what they could expect if they wanted to walk that path. We've captured 2,500 new paths. Many of these have never been mapped before, and it's the first time they've been made available. And we currently have over 400 volunteers across the country, and we've got people from Shetland to the borders, and practically every area of Scotland we've got someone working in. So how did we actually get to this point? The first step was to do a proof of concept and see what was actually possible. We identified an area in the west of Scotland which has a good mix of urban and rural areas, and the aim was essentially to collect as much data as possible and compare with what was currently available. We invited partners located in that area, so local authorities and other organisations in the sector, to sit around the table and identify what we actually needed to do in the project and help us shape things going forward. And we found that the path network that we collected in the proof of concept was double the length of what you could find on publicly available mapping in the same area. So this basically showed us that this is definitely a job worth doing, and it would apply on a national scale as well. So coming to rolling out onto a national level, what do we do next? There's many questions and challenges that were raised. Firstly, the obvious one of how do we actually find all of the paths throughout Scotland? How do we gather useful information about these paths, so any access issues, the condition they're in, any physical barriers, that kind of stuff. And lastly, how do we actually know what we have is correct and right? And the solution to this was volunteers and local knowledge, which raised the other question of how do we actually attract volunteers to the project and enable them to succeed? So as the Ramblers is a membership organisation, it gave us a great starting point because we were able to approach our members directly and ask them if they wanted to be a part of the project. So this allowed us to start small, test things, build on learnings and iterate going forward. But it also meant we had to keep it simple. The Ramblers age range tends to be on the old side, and you've got to assume that the audience has absolutely no knowledge of GIS, no experience with data capture or using apps or anything like that. So we had to make it as straightforward as possible for people to use. And the fact that Ramblers has a volunteer management system means that we could set people up as official volunteers and have an easy and open kind of line of communication to talk back and forth. So now that we had evidence from the proof of concept that there was a real benefit to the project and that we had our first set of systems developed with our volunteers, we went out and promoted the proof of concept results and kind of announced that we were expanding nationally. So to coincide with this, we produced promotional videos to share on social media. We sent out press releases about vast networks of hidden paths that you could find throughout Scotland, and we let people know that they could get involved and help out if they wanted to. So this led to really good coverage on BBC, radio and TV, lots of local newspaper stories, some national newspaper coverage as well. And it was also Ramblers Scotland's most successful social media post. But most importantly, it led to our first set of external volunteers. So now that we've done the promotion, that kind of captured the interest of people and gave us something to build on. So we slowly expanded the user base and the number of volunteers we had to continue kind of testing the products we had and stress testing things. We also started a quarterly e-newsletter, which just gave project updates to anybody who might be interested, but also included an open offer to get involved if they wanted to. But everything was framed on how can we work together. We weren't being insular or controlling or telling people what you can or can't do with our data or systems. The whole idea of the project was designed to be collaborative and open and work to get towards something that's essentially a greater good. So getting ready to go public, by the time we opened up the project to the public, we had our tools tried, tested and in place. So we had our suite of data gathering apps, so that included field maps for kind of like examining the network, survey 123 for doing the path questionnaire, and quick capture for capturing currently unmapped paths. We had a volunteer hub, which was designed using Hub Premium, and that's essentially a one-stop shop website for everything that a volunteer would need to take part. So interactive mapping, user guides, browser-based versions of all of the volunteering activities, so people could go out and make notes and then come back and do it through the hub rather than having to be on site using the apps all the time. And also we had the Scottish Path Map, which is the public-facing output from the project. So a little bit more on the Scottish Path Map itself. We released the first version of the map in August of 2021. And the first version of the map largely consisted of open source data. This was to avoid any potential licensing issues because the end goal of the project was that everything that we gather is going to be released open source for people to use exactly how they wish. It also included data donated by our initial partners, and as well as the paths that were captured by our initial set of volunteers. And alongside the launch of the Scottish Paths Map, we opened up our volunteering offer to the public. So anyone, anywhere can get involved. There was no minimum level of commitment. You didn't have to be a Ramblers member. It's just like anybody who wants to get involved could. And it's important to note that we weren't ready. We published the Scottish Paths Map knowing that it still had problems. We needed to get more volunteers on board to speed the process up and get more of the network audited and filled out. But if we waited until it was done or it's finished, what would that even look like? How long would that take? So it was important that we provided a means when we launched the map for the public to actually flag up problems. So we created an interactive map where you could just fill in a little form to report an issue about path. And this was actually really successful because it engaged people that didn't necessarily want to volunteer and get involved, but they wanted to complain about something or sort something out. So it actually made a lot of improvements in the network because of that. And it did encourage people to sign up as a volunteer to just kind of make their area right. They'd look at an area and say, oh, that's missing, or you need to change that. So they actually signed up just to correct it, essentially. So why do people actually get involved in the project? Our sign-up form included a question which asked essentially why do people want to get involved, and we found that there wasn't one particular reason, but there was lots of recurring themes. So there was lots around giving back to a local area or community, personal development, whether that was health and well-being or their actual technical skill set, protecting paths and environment, so there was evidence that something's there and maybe help it be maintained and not be forgotten, but also sharing knowledge with others. There was lots of references to getting lots of joy out of an area and wanting to spread the word so other people can get the same level of enjoyment that they got. So once the initial spike of interest kind of died down, we had to look at how we could keep getting new people involved in the project. It was clear that we couldn't stick to a one-size-fits-all strategy. We had to do some audience-specific messaging. So some examples of that involved targeting local press with, say, your area needs you kind of press releases that aimed at kind of locations that maybe didn't have many volunteers. So it would encourage more people to kind of get in and fill those gaps where we were missing people. We work with communities on their specific aims. We don't go to a community group and say, this is what we have, this is the tool, this is how you have to use it. We've had much more success by kind of approaching them and say, what are you trying to achieve and how can we help? Because more often than not, if you help them with what they're trying to do, you'll get what you need as a byproduct anyway. And it proves much more rewarding for everyone, really. We have to highlight the technology that we use and how it's accessible and easy to use. And that led to a piece on Click, the BBC's technology programme. And we attend things like parliamentary events as well, which helps us kind of show the project off to members of the Scottish Parliament and decision makers who may not have previously been aware of the project, and kind of help drive support at a governmental level. But it's also important to think about partnerships with other organisations rather than just volunteers, and that is especially including people who might not agree with what we're doing so much, because we need to try and have those conversations and find compromises and collaborate wherever we can. What have we learned so far from this project? That it seems really obvious, but communication is key. It's really hard to get across everything that we can do or we're doing in static releases like emails and newsletters and stuff like that. So much is resolved just by having quick chats with people and making it clear that actually it's a really easy fix, so we can easily do that, and it just helps kind of the positive feedback that we get from people essentially. The vast majority of volunteers will barely do anything, and that's completely fine. Every little helps, it all contributes to the project. Some people may audit the path at the end of the road, you never hear from them again, but that's still a path that's now been done. And you've got to keep the level of accessibility really low, and make it very easy to get involved, because you never know who will sign up. Our top 10 volunteers have done thousands of paths between them, but if they found it hard to get involved, they may never have done, and we never would have got that work done. Things can never be too straightforward. We've made the apps and systems as simple as we can while still having the functionality that we need, and that's still too complex for some people. So wherever you can, you've got to make it as easy to use as possible. And making it easy for partners to get involved, the response we've had from the project has been universally almost positive, but you've got to kind of keep in mind with the current situation when it comes to resources and budgets and stuff that you get a lot of, oh, it would be great to get involved, but we can't spare the time, we can't spare the effort. So where we can, we go to those partners and be like, well, what can we do to help you out? If you've got that data that needs tidied up, maybe we can tidy it up instead of you, and that's maybe dropping that barrier to stop people getting involved. It does mean more work on our side of things, but it's kind of like a sacrifice you need to make to get that engagement. And finally, think about the legacy of the project. This is a huge job that will take years to do, and we're in a sector that's largely year-to-year funding, and it's not particularly reliable in some cases. So you've got to think about how to set the project up to be either self-sustainable, or to put it in a position where it's providing such a public benefit that a governmental body or someone takes it under its wing and runs with it. So you've got to really be honest with yourselves and kind of have that legacy in mind, because there's been so much good work that's been done, and we want to keep that going for as long as possible. So back again to the stats to finish. The project's been a massive success to date, and we're going from strength to strength. There's still lots in the pipeline of what we're going to do new coming up. so we'll hopefully be around for a while yet. I hope this has been interesting and useful. If you want to have a chat or get in touch with me about anything, you can find my email address on there. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. Fantastic presentation. We've got time for some quick questions. If you stick your hand up, Katie will run to you.
Hi, thank you. That was a very interesting talk. Which apps did you use? Was it field maps? Or?
So we use a combination. We use field maps at the moment for like navigating the network and selecting the paths that you want to work on. We use Survey 123 for the audit form, and we use Quick Capture for capturing new paths using GPS. And it's all tied into a Hub Premium site as well, which has all the tools included.
Yeah, thank you. It strikes me as being very similar to Slowways. Do you have any working relationship with Slowways at all?
We do, yeah. We talk to Dan quite a lot, who's manages Slowways, and we're working together where we can. We're doing fairly different things when it goes down to the detail of it, but yeah, we work together when we can.
Any more questions?
So what kind of licenses did you get? Did you get maybe fewer or mobile licensing?
Licensing, we got our licenses through the Hub Premium service, and that provides a volunteer kind of logins to get into the apps that we use. But beyond that, we don't use any special licenses, just the usual stuff.
How did you identify what qualifies as a path on open access land, and not just a design line or somewhere where you happen to be able to go? Or did you have to do any filtering of what was captured?
We could do an entire presentation just on that, I think. So when we first started, we sat down with the other organisations and bodies, and we kind of set a minimum criteria that a path needs to meet to be something we want to include. So it's on something that's on land of access right supply. Also, there needs some major or minor criteria, and if it doesn't meet those, then we can filter them out and remove them from the network.